Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and today we are going to be building a new project. It is the Estes Green Eggs rocket, which is a fairly simple build compared to some of the other things we've done, but it has an interesting purpose, and that purpose is to carry eggs. Yes, so one of the more common challenges in model rocketry is to loft an egg and recover it safely, intact without the egg smashing. And it's kind of the basis for the TARC competition. So it's a good thing to be able to do. So these rockets are purposefully designed to carry eggs. So that'll be fun. Off that goes. We have some balsa here to start with. Oh, and I should mention that so this kit, along with a bunch of other hardware, was funded by our good friends at the Spartan Foundation for Education, who made a generous grant to support the club. So thank you very much to them. So in any event, after checking our supplies, we've got body tube, we've got a nose cone, we've got a payload bay, we've got a bunch of other paraphernalia. It is time to sand. Now, I've done most of the work, but just as a reminder, we are trying to get off the nastiest of the irregularities in our balsa sheet. We will eventually do the whole finishing process to make sure that the grains are as unobtrusive as possible. So this is not intended to be perfect and smoothing everything out, but we do want to get rid of the most obnoxious of the machining problems and the grain and all sorts of stuff like that that comes when you make balsa fins. So I've done most of this already. It was just this last segment that needed to be sanded down. And this is probably more than enough. And that looks, there's still a lot of grain in it, but we're not going to be able to sand the grain out. We'd have to really get rid of a lot of material in order to do that, and it's easier to just use fill instead, get a better finish. Okay, so now we are, of course, going to remove the fins from cardstock or the sheet here of balsa. These are laser cut, so they're pretty easy to take care of. In general, you only really need to make sure you get the spots where the fin is still actually connected, where the laser didn't cut. Because if the laser cuts through the whole thing, then it'll just fall apart. There won't be any connection. So we really just need to get the burrs that are holding this together. And it looks like they're only about, I don't know, maybe 6 per fin here. We don't, of course, want to just force these out, because if we force them out, we would get very sloppy looking burr still stuck in the wood. Now, there, of course, are going to be burrs one way or the other, but we want to keep them small and easy to sand down. So there are my fins cut out. As mentioned, there are burrs here, 2 of them there, 2 of them here, and it looks like 1 on each part of the root. So next thing, of course, we need to do is we need to stack the fins like so and sand off those burrs as best we can. It's also nice to get kind of the laser burns the wood, right? So that's why it's darker. It's kind of nice to get that off too. So that looks better. It's not perfect, but it's probably good enough. The burrs I can't feel anymore. That was our main goal, so that's taken care of. Get them on the back here as well. And remember, we're going to shape these as well. So we don't need to we do want the burrs gone, but we don't need to, completely get rid of all the laser scarring. That's pretty good. These ones, they're in the root, so I'm going to be kind of careful with that. I'm not going to sand them too hard. I don't want to mess up the root, but I do want the burrs gone. If the burrs aren't gone, it won't be a nice smooth root. There we go. That's pretty good. In order to join to fin. By the way, this rocket is a bit different from ones we've done previously. Here's the body tube. For, even before I discuss that, the grain in this body tube, so the spiral, is pretty noticeable. And I think this thing's supposed to be, it's either supposed to be white or green. It doesn't really matter. This is going to be very noticeable. So, and I can even feel the bump. So there's two different spirals. This is a light one and this is a heavier one. I'm going to have to fill these in order to make it look decent. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with the wood fill on the spiral and then sand that. Because otherwise this is going to be very noticeable. But anyway, you'll notice that the body tube here has little slots cut into it. That's because this is called through the wall construction. And what's going to happen is this is why you test fit first. Let's try another one. The fin is going to go through the slot. There we go. And this is a much stronger way of constructing fins or attaching fins than just gluing them onto the body tube itself. The reason is this part is going to attach to the engine mount, which we need to build shortly. So there's going to be an anchor point here, there are anchor points here, and we're also going to have the fillet. So this is significantly stronger than just attaching it like this. So that's a new one actually for us. Anyway, I do need to shape the fin, so I'm going to shape one of them and then do the others off camera. But remember, this is where we're just going to round over the side with our sanding block. About 10 to 15 strokes is probably pretty good. This is actually a fairly thick piece of balsa, so it might take more than that. Okay, and that looks, it needs to be balanced a little bit, but it's not bad. It's not much happened here in the middle, actually, now that I'm looking at it, so we need to do something about that. Sometimes you get the lead and tail edges, but you don't seem to get the middle very much. So there we go. Looking down, that looks better. It needs to be kind of adjusted here at the front. Yeah, that looks pretty decent on the front. The back looked pretty good to begin with. And the rounding in the middle is still not as significant as the rounding at the edges. So I'm going to go over that a couple more times. Now, kind of the unfortunate reality is when we use our wood fill, it's going to undo some level of accuracy when we do the fin rounding. So this doesn't need to be perfect. It should be good because you don't want to have to sand through the filler and the wood in order to well, it's not really airfoiling, but in order to round the fin. So we'll make it nice, but it doesn't need to be perfect. I am going to round the tail edge here too. It's nice to have both the front and the back be airfoiled. And we also have edges here that are going to need to be done in order to get the full effect. Those don't need to be, they're hard to get shaped right because they're so small and they're at angles to everything else that you're doing. So those are kind of tricky, but also less important. Okay, and one more. All right. Again, I can see that there's a lot of darker patch here. That would be the laser cut part of the fin that I didn't round very well. Ooh, that looks funky. See, these right angles, they make things kind of tricky when you're trying to round fins properly. So that can be kind of tedious. It's great. It's not good. It's not really great either yet. But again, I'm not super worried about this because of what's going to happen when I put the filler on. I'm going to have to do some reshaping anyway. So that's pretty good. The other two I will do off camera because this isn't super great cinema. All right. It is now time to grab the hobby knife. Now, here is, well, this part is smushed, as you can see looking down like that. So this is got damaged in shipment, essentially. It got smushed because it was in a box that was packed full with a lot of other rocket kits. So fortunately, the body tube is fine, but this got smushed quite a bit. And I actually left it on here for quite some time, and it hasn't reformed it properly, and apparently it's never going to, would be my guess. So this is our payload area. There's not much to do with this right now, other than try to get the shape right. Here's the nose cone. The nose cone, actually, if we look at the instructions, the nose cone, where's the nose cone section? Oh, here it is. So this is actually two pieces. There's a nose cone, and then the payload bay is going to fit in between, and then the back end of the nose cone piece is going to abut against that. So I need to cut these apart. This I don't really love doing, to be honest with you. I've tried this a variety of ways. I'm going to do it today with my hobby knife. I've tried it with a Dremel tool with a little cutting attachment on it. And that works, but it's kind of hard to control. And it tends to make a larger cut than I really want. But my goal here is I'm going to cut right through here. And you could just spin the knife around like this in the groove pretty much forever, and you probably wouldn't do a whole lot. You really do need to push quite a bit. And once you get into the plastic, like you can see maybe you can't, but I am starting to etch it a little bit. Once you get the tip of the blade into the plastic, then you actually start making some progress. So I'm pushing pretty hard. This is a good way. Well, there's a lot of potential here to cut yourself. So make sure that you keep your other hand well away from the knife blade because it's not too hard to slip. There, you notice, as I was saying that, the knife slipped a little bit because the blade is now inside the plastic. Once the blade is in the plastic, the cutting goes pretty easily. So I'm just carefully pushing down and rotating the blade. And I still need to maintain a decent amount of force. It's particularly tough when you get to, see, here's a seam. The seam in the plastic is thicker than it is everywhere else. So there was a little bit of a chunk as I pushed through. Anyway, this wasn't that bad a cut, truth be told. But you do need to be very careful because it is not hard for the blade to slip repeatedly while you're doing this. All right, so this end is actually pretty smooth, but still, it's a good time to just sand it. This makes an awful sound, so sorry. We're not trying to really make it smooth exactly. We're just trying to remove any jagged parts because we don't want jagged parts for a variety of reasons. And this side seems to have the majority of the little burrs and things like that from the cutting. I should really put that away. Anyway, so sanding this off, those burrs looked like they went off almost right away. There's still one I see. All right, that's not great still. It's still a little bit of nastiness over there. I'm going to have to kind of angle the piece now because it was on the outside. And there's the last little remnant of the cut. That's pretty good now. All right. So eventually this is going to go like this. And that's how it's going to be. We obviously don't want to glue the whole thing together because if we glue the whole thing together, then you can't put anything inside the payload bay, and that defeats the entire purpose of the rocket. So you kind of have to choose at this point. The instructions in looking at them, back here to the nose cone, I do need to cut out we'll do that in a moment. Basically, they just suggest you put some tape in here so that neither the top nor the bottom is going to be permanently attached. I think that's probably, not really the greatest idea, to be honest. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to glue one of the sections together. And I think since this is screwed up, this is bent, I'm going to put the nice end, the nicer, because it's actually bent on both sides, but I'm going to put the most bent part here. And I'm going to glue this business together. The nose cone I'm going to leave as potentially removable. And then when you launch the rocket, you're going to put tape along this. And it actually doesn't take very much to hold it in if there's nothing else here. But since we want to put an egg in here potentially, that's significantly more. So we would want to put a decent amount of tape, around it, and maybe at perpendicular, parallel with the direction of the rocket as well. So let's glue this. I'm going to put just a tiny little bit of crazy glue here. Now, crazy glue, what it's made out of, tends to discolor plastic, so hopefully it won't be noticeable. Anyway, I want to do this really quickly, of course, so I'm going to get it lined up, and I'm going to push it down. There we go. That was fast and pretty accurate. I have a little bit of crazy glue that seeped out the sides, so that needs to get mopped up. Not with my hands, of course, just dabbing it here with a paper towel. Okay, that's set. This, of course, has a little bit of crazy glue on it, so away that goes, so it doesn't crazy glue me. All right. At this point, I think we're going to wrap up for today. I'm going to finish sanding these. They'll be ready to go. Nose cone. Last thing we need to do with the nose cone. This bit right here needs to come out. You should always cut toward the center of the rocket when you do this, because it's possible, although unlikely, you would cut through the eyelet and then it wouldn't work. And you wouldn't have any anchor points for your parachute and your shock cord, which would clearly be a problem. I'm just trying to squeeze the blade through the parts that have already been cut, and just watch your fingers again, because the blade tends to slip when doing stuff like this. So make sure you're always cutting away from your fingers. So I'm cutting down right now. So both in toward the plastic and away from your hand. This is actually pretty well attached on the interior. Maybe we'll take a couple stabs at it, like so. Yeah. This is surprisingly well attached. Well, I got 2 halves of it. I'm surprised I can't generate any torque by trying to spin it, but it is very well anchored at the deepest part of the nose cone. So maybe I can kind of push it with the dowel rod. I suspect the dowel rod will just snap. Yeah, that is very well stuck in there. I'll try cutting it the other direction. Well, I've got a start to it here. Trace the edge of it a couple times. Maybe I can weaken the structure a little bit. And I realize that I am cutting toward the eyelet, and that is a no-no. But I can't really fit the blade in any other way at the moment. Yeah. So we'll just have to trace it a couple times here. Well, in any event, I'm going to do that off camera. You don't need to watch me struggle with that. Thanks for watching part 1. We will pick up with doing the motor mount in part 2. See you then.